Good morning, senior parents. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about our students and getting them ready for their senior year. I'm going to tell you this is the first time I've ever done a meeting this way, so it feels a little awkward to me, and I hope that it is convenient for you so that you're not having to come up to school at a time that's probably not convenient for you and just can watch this whenever you want to. So anyway, let's just move right on and get into things. First off, I just need to introduce myself and let you know that my name is Jan Penrod. In case you don't know me, I'm the counselor here at CAC, and will be my 19th year, 18th year at CAC. And I'm just looking forward to spending another year with the seniors and getting to know all of them really well and having a great, great year. This is my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. It is the best way to get a hold of me. You can obviously leave voicemails, but I'm most of the time sitting in front of my computer, so I can respond pretty quickly to emails and can give you whatever information you need. And speaking of email, I would ask that you please make an effort to read my emails. I try to send out timely information and keep you as informed as possible. And I would ask that you make sure that you're paying attention to those and that also your child is paying attention to those. Hopefully they are all also receiving them on their own email. Students do need to check their email. It's important that they start getting used to doing that, not just because I want them to read what I send, but it's also the primary way that colleges are going to communicate with them. And so they need to make sure that they're keeping up with what colleges send. I know it's getting more and more important. This past year, the University of Arkansas, for example, sent students emails about acceptance and scholarships and housing and orientation, all in separate emails. And sometimes they read the first one and they're like, oh, I got in, and then they didn't read the next ones and they were missing important information. So just make sure that you encourage them to also keep up with their email. It's a good time to start helping them transition to taking care of what's of their own business. It's important that you know what's going on and that you try to help them through this process. But once they get to college next year, a lot of times colleges aren't even going to talk to the parents because students are already 18 years old. And so it's a good transition period. That's a lot of what this year is about, is making that transition to being more independent, being more responsible, and taking care of things for themselves. Okay, just to start off, I'll give you a few important dates of things that we have coming up. School's going to start on August 12th, and then graduation, which is important to all of you, is scheduled for May 17th. There will obviously be lots of other things in between there that you'll want to know about, but for right now, that's probably the most important things to you. We also are having the college fair on September 23rd. If you've not ever been or your student's not ever been, this is held at the Stevens Center on the campus of UALR, and we have probably about 100 colleges represented there, and students can just go around and visit with all those different colleges. Also on October 1st, the CAPS, which by the way stands for Central Arkansas Private Schools, we go together with the area private schools so that we can bring in more people and sponsor better quality for all of you. So we put on a financial aid night, and that will be on October 1st, and this year it will be held at CAC. Coming up for next year, there's lots of expenses. Senior year is expensive, and so I just want to give you a heads up on all that. Class dues will be $90. They will need to purchase their cap and gown, and that's about $30. And then there will also be senior ads for the yearbook. Now, these are optional. It's totally up to you if you want to purchase them or not, but the prices are there. Mrs. Quattlebaum is in charge of the yearbook, and she will send you out information in the fall that tells you exactly what you need to do and all of that information to keep you going. But the biggest thing I wanted to let you know is all of this is due in September and October, so it's a big expense to hit all at one time. The dues cover the extra graduation expenses, renting the chairs, the stage, those kinds of things. And also we do a senior kickoff in the fall, that usually that first week of school, and also a senior night in the spring where we just kind of have a day of closure for all the students. And so it covers all of that. What it doesn't cover basically is your cap and gown, if you want to buy announcements, AP test fees, and any junior senior stuff that comes up, like for the junior senior banquet. Okay, just wanted to talk for a minute about the situation with colleges right now. Now, I know this information is a little bit dated, but it's the best I have for right now, but it's looking at 2011. And basically, out of about 100 students who enroll in college, only 30 graduate. And I know that this year we spent a lot of time talking about college and how important it is for students to go to college. And I guess I do want to make a little disclaimer that, not a disclaimer is not the right word, but that generally when I talk college, I use that in the generic sense of some kind of post-high school training. And so that could be a vocational training. It can be going to a traditional college. It can be any number of things. But the basic idea is that we don't want students to just graduate from high school and stop there, that doesn't give them the greatest chance of being able to support themselves and a family in the future. So we do want to encourage them to go on to get some kind of additional training in some area. But we also think it's very important that they find what is a better fit for them. And the traditional four-year college is not always the best fit for everybody. And so that's part of the process of this year, is to try and work with them and work with you so we can all work together to help them make the best choice, because nobody wants to spend a whole lot of money on something that isn't going to do them any good. And like, this is just showing you that basically out of the 100 students right now who go to college, only about 30 ever actually graduate or graduate on time. When they talk about on time, they are saying 6 years. That is what's considered on time for college graduation now. Now, I don't know about you, but 6 years is not only a long time, but it's very expensive. If you just think about the average cost per year, or if you just pick a number and say the cost of a college is $20,000 a year, well, that fifth year, not only are they paying an extra $20,000 to go to school, but they're also having a year of lost income. And so if you were going to start working at about $40,000 a year, then really that fifth year of college costs you $60,000. And the 6th year, again, is another at least $60,000. So that's a really big expense. And we want to try and help students avoid that if all possible. In this next slide, you will see this is just a picture of a screenshot of Naviance, which is our college and career readiness software. We use this with the students to do just about everything their senior year. I have gone through with all of them. We've actually started working on a little bit in 8th grade, but I reviewed all of this with each senior this year. We worked on their login information. So hopefully they're all re-familiar with how to get into it and how to use it to request their transcripts. But I just wanted to show it briefly to you so that you could also ask your student about it. I met with each of them individually, and they should have brought home a purple folder that had some information in it that they should have shared with you. If they did not, you might want to ask them about it. But one of the things we did was go through the process of how to request transcripts, which is what each college will want to help decide if they're going to admit them. And so that is through Naviance. They all have an account, and it's a really simple process. They just go up and under colleges, and they will pick the colleges that they're applying to, and then there's a button to request transcripts. So you might want to just have them show that to you. But also in this are interest assessments, which they have also done. And then there's a program to make a resume, which a lot of them will have to have for a college application. Under their profile, there's information about their GPA, their test scores, what their current rank is. It has the ability where they can go in based on some of their different assessments, but even just if there's something they're interested in, to look up different careers, and it will tell them everything they ever wanted to know about that career, how much it pays, what you have to do, what kinds of tasks you have, what you need to major in college, what kinds of classes you take, and then what kind of colleges, which colleges offer the degree that they would need. And so it's really good for exploring. We also have a scholarship list in here, so all the scholarships that come across my desk are also listed in this program, so that this is where they would go in on a regular basis and check and see what scholarships are coming up. Then just things that I think are cool is they have a little map that shows you where all of our students have been accepted to school, and just where they are going at the time, and what kinds of what their average GPAs and test scores are. So it's a really neat program, and if you have time, you might want to go through and check it out. Okay, so a lot of times what you hear when people are looking for college is about finding the right fit. And I guess what I want to say about that is that, that's a big buzzword, and I don't think that there's necessarily one college that this is just the place for your child. Okay, I think that what is important is that they find the place where they have the greatest chance for being successful. Generally, that means a college that they're going to be happy at. And so what I like to encourage people to do is make an informed decision. I don't get kickbacks from colleges. It doesn't matter to me what school they go to. I just want them to make sure that they have looked around so that they don't have any regrets. And so that's why, for those of you whose child's have gone on the college trips with us, that we make sure we visit a variety of schools. I want them to look at schools that are private schools and public schools and big schools and little schools, and just find out what kind of place makes them feel more comfortable, makes them feel like they have the greatest chance for success. There's all kinds of factors that go into that. And as a family, those are things that you need to discuss, is also what's important to you. And so that you can come to an agreement on what kind of school you want your child to be at. I do ask them to go ahead and come back to school with a list of places that they would like to apply. Anywhere from 5 to 10. Now, some are just absolutely for certain, this is where I'm going, and no questions asked, and I don't want to do anything else. That's between you and your child. It doesn't make any difference to me. Again, I like to encourage everybody to make an informed decision. Every single year, I have students who change their mind at the last minute. Including this year, I had a student the last week before school decided, okay, I will go visit that college that I've resisted visiting, and totally changed their mind. That's fine. You can do that. For some schools, it's not an issue at all. But for some, you've missed scholarship deadlines. And so you're not going to be able to get all the aid that you would have gotten if you had gone ahead and applied early. So that's why I like to encourage students between now and when they come back to school is their opportunity to really start researching and doing that exploration and coming up with a list of places they want to apply, not where they want to go. They don't have to make that decision until spring, but where they want to apply, so that we can get all that taken care of. I try to encourage them to get all their applications done in early October. The reason for that is a lot of scholarships start coming up, scholarship application deadlines in early to mid-November. And so we want to make sure that a student has done their application, has been accepted, gotten all their paperwork in, so they can do their scholarship application and get that process done and not miss an opportunity to get some free money for school. And so that's kind of what I've talked to them about when I met with them, is that just being ready to come back to school with that list of schools. Being ready for college, just kind of as a side note, when I'm talking about that, it's not as important where you go is what you do while you're there. And that goes back to that saying that we want them to get out. It's nice to go, but it's even more important to get out. And so some other things that are just kind of not just academics that are important for being ready for college is time management. There's a lot to do in college. There's lots of distractions. And so that's something that you can help work with your child on, as well as we will at school, is managing their time and making sure they're meeting deadlines and taking care of things. Again, back to that independence of, this is your responsibility. You have to take care of that. And while there's some things that are more important than others, I would rather see a child experience a little failure while they're here, as opposed to getting to college and missing something really big and failing a class as a result. So we just kind of want to go through this process again, this transition of helping them to be more independent and to learning those time management skills. A lot of them are already really good at it, but some are not. And another thing that's really important for college is self-advocacy. They need to be able to recognize when they need help and to be able to seek that help and accept it. A lot of people don't like to ask for help or feel like that's a sign of weakness. And I will encourage students throughout the year, and hope you will also, that colleges offer a lot of help these days. They have writing labs where they can take their papers in and get them looked over, and people will help them correct mistakes in them before they turn them in. Now, obviously, if you're not doing that paper until the night before, that's not going to happen. So that goes back to that time management. There's also lots of tutoring. There's peer tutoring. There's just all kinds of programs to help students with classes if they will go and seek it. The college is not always, or not normally, going to come and seek them out and say, hey, why haven't you gone and gotten tutoring in this class? You could be making a better grade. That's up to the student to do. But it's important that they know those are options and that we encourage them to seek that help. I know sometimes they don't want to do it. Even here in our school, when we have math labs and things like study reviews and things, students don't like to come. And so that's just another area that we can help work on students, especially this year, to get them to realize that that's important, and it's not a reflection of their intelligence or anything else. Everybody needs help with something, and it's good. The better thing is to go ask for that help than to act like we don't need it. Okay, so again, we're back to exploring, and just want to let you know that your student gets 2 visits their senior year that don't count against their absence, so they can go and visit any college that they're interested in. You can go to things that are big group events like Bear Fact Days, Bison Days. Every school has something different that they call it, but Wolf Days. I can't remember what Fayetteville calls theirs, but you can go to those things, and there are advantages to that. A lot of times they share a lot of great information. They will have a lot of presentations and programs and activities, but the downside of it is it's not a normal day. As we talk about exploring colleges, we have the following opportunities for students to be able to continue to look at colleges next year. And first of all would be college visits. Every college will let you go online and sign up to have a college visit. Now, let me go ahead and tell you, parents, that sometimes your students will say, oh, I'm going to go with my friends, and that's fine, but it's also completely normal for parents to go on these college tours, okay? But colleges expect that. That's the norm. Going along and hearing what they have to say, don't let them intimidate you into feeling like you can't do that. I would encourage them to do most of the talking and to ask questions and things like that of the tour guides. But at the same time, you're more than welcome to attend those college visits. Seniors are allowed 2 visits that don't count against their absences, and all they need to do is, when they come back from the college, is bring back a note from the admissions office saying they were there, and that way Ms. Lillard will know not to count it against their absences. Students can also, and this would count as one of their days, they can attend things that, like every college will have big group visits, like Bear Facts Days, Bison Days, Wolf Days, whatever, they all call them something different. pros and cons of those. An advantage is that there's lots and lots of people on campus, so they can meet new people that they might be going to school with. There's lots of activities. They will have speakers who will come and give them lots of information. And a lot of times they also have things for parents at those, and so you can go to those. It's not as normal, I don't think, for parents to go to those. They're usually more geared towards students, but sometimes they do have programs for parents. But they do have speakers who will come and give the students all kinds of different information, so sometimes that's really helpful. Downside is it's not just a very real visit. It's not what a normal day would look like. They're made to be exciting and fun and entertaining, and so it doesn't really give a student a true picture of what just a normal day in college would look like. Now, if your child is one who's pretty confident of what they want to study and you're going for an individual visit, always ask the admissions person on the front end if they could schedule a time to talk with a professor in the department that the student's interested in studying in, and that's helpful to get, again, more detailed information and kind of just get familiar with what that school has to offer them. And then somebody else that you might want to visit with would be the financial aid officer. They can give you the specifics of their school and what they can help you with and things that you need to do to be able to get the most aid from their school. So those are just things that you might want to go ahead and schedule. You can always go back once the student has decided where they're going to go and do those visits if you want to, but that's just something you can do on the front end. We do have a lot of reps who come on campus, probably 40 or so will come every year. Students, some years we have them sign up in Navient. Sometimes we just have sign-up sheets in my office. I haven't really decided what we're going to use next year, but a lot of them came as juniors and visited with colleges. Some of them they were not allowed to if they're real big visits. If they draw a lot of students, sometimes we would limit it to seniors. So what I would ask you to just talk to your students and, as a family, be mulling over these things of who do we want to talk to. While I'm happy for them to visit with anybody that they're interested in, I don't want them to be using it just as a get out of class card, so that they're missing class with no interest in the school. And so that's just something else that is an opportunity that's available for them. There are also many schools who will do evening presentations in town. Anytime I know of those, I will advertise them, but a lot of times they will contact students directly if they've shown any interest in their school. It's good to go those to anytime you can, especially the more selective schools. If your child is looking at a very selective school, and they are coming into town and having an evening presentation for students, then they should always go to those. That just kind of confirms for those college reps that, yes, I am committed. I do want to go here. Another opportunity that they have as seniors is a day to job shadow. This is also very, very helpful when they're thinking about careers, because, many times, they're not as bad as kindergartners who all want to be firemen, but a lot of times they think they want to do something without really having a whole lot of knowledge about that or knowing what those people do every day. It may just be they know that's what you do, they know that's what I do, their best friend's mom, those kinds of things. But job shadowing is a great opportunity to spend a day seeing what that person does every day and just kind of give them an idea is this really how I want to spend my time? And so we do give them all one day of job shadowing. They do have to get that approved ahead of time, and there's some paperwork involved. Okay, as far as applying to colleges, all applications are online. Excuse me. You go directly to the college's website and they fill out the application. Some of them are very simple. It's just fill in the bubbles and you're done. And you send it in, and there's schools that we call just basically automatic admits. A lot of your state schools, they're going to have criteria that if your student meets that, they're automatically admitted. For instance, University of Arkansas, if you had 20 on the ACT and a 3-point GPA and you fill out the application to be admitted, then you will be. And there's not any further criteria needed for the application process. Other schools, it's a little more involved. So it all depends on the kind of school that you're applying to. A lot of your private schools are more involved, your more selective schools are more involved. And they start looking, if you look down at the bottom of this, when you start thinking about letters of recommendation and essays and interviews, a lot of those are your more selective schools. For these automatic admit schools, they're going to want to see the high school transcript, they're going to want to see the ACT scores, and they're all going to want a copy of the immunization records, which, by the way, we have provided to them in their purple folder. Okay, back up just a little bit. I have on here the Common App. This is an application that about 800 colleges use. Unfortunately, not a whole lot in Arkansas use it, but if your child is applying to a school that requires the Common App, then you can look at this application, and if there's any place else they're interested in applying, they just fill out the application one time and it go to all of them. So I'm just going to give you an example. The University of Tulsa would be a college that would require the Common App. So Fayetteville, the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville now accepts the Common App. They don't require it, but they accept it. So if you were going to apply to the University of Tulsa, then you might as well use that application to also apply to the University of Arkansas, because there's no point in completing two different applications. And I hope that makes sense. I've talked to the students about it some. When they log into their Naviance account, they can tell if a college is a Common App school or not. And basically, I've just kind of told them, we'll get back together and we'll talk about this in more detail in the fall. But the Common application, where it does go to any number of schools that they choose to send it to, it is a more involved application requiring essays and letters of recommendation and just additional work. From some of your regular state school applications don't require that. But again, every school is going to require the transcript, which they request through Naviance. That's the only way to get that transcript. They are sent electronically through Naviance. And we've gone through, I've shown them how to do that, and I will show them again, and I will help them as many times as they need help doing that. But it's something they need to do. And so that's just a process of, even though I know it's really tempting to say, I'll just email Ms. Penrod for you, this is something they have to do. They have to go in through Naviance and request that transcript. On their transcript, all their test scores are on the transcript. So most school will take that, and they don't have to have them sent additionally. There are some schools, such as OBU and Harding and some other probably private schools, that require the test scores come directly from ACT. They won't accept them from us. So anytime your child is taking the ACT, they need to put those schools on there to have the score sent automatically. Otherwise, they're going to have to pay extra to go back in and do that. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you about all this? Parents, help them, but don't do it for them. Okay, back to that independence. Let's make them get their stuff done. So one of the main reasons that I try to encourage them to get those applications done early in October is not only because of scholarships, but also your more selective schools don't get as many applications early as they do later when their deadlines are nearing. And the people who are reading those applications and trying to make decisions, when it comes down to February or whatever due date that they have, they may be reading 75 or 100 applications a day, whereas in the fall, they're only looking at maybe 25. And that helps them to be able to spend more time and think more about and remember more clearly. And so they're a little more free with things than they are and when they start reading them later and get in a more crunch time. So it's always good. Another reason is because if they go ahead and do their application and put down their deposit for residence hall, then they get to make a choice earlier. They get first choice. And so a lot of times students want to get those applications in. I will tell you, a lot of times they're going to want a deposit, but those are refundable. Now you're going to have to ask for your money back, but in this, you have until May 1st to do that. And so once the student makes their decision, then you can ask for a refund for whatever deposit you've put down you don't need. Okay, so just real briefly, want to go over again your more selective schools and the kinds of things they're looking at. If you talk about in general, just your basic school, test scores and GPA, that's your basic criteria for most state schools. That's all they're going to look at. As long as you meet that criteria, student's good to go. After that, a more selective school or some of your private schools are going to start looking at the following things, which is the strength of the curriculum. What kinds of classes are they taking? They're going to have essays that the student needs to write, and they're going to look at extracurricular activities, and that includes community service, and then their teacher recommendations, um, and also personal recommendations of things that they ask for. The larger the school, the less time they have to spend on applications, and so they're probably not going to go past number 2 or number 3 for sure. But small schools are sometimes going to look at students who may have weaker grades or lower test scores and consider them more holistically and not necessarily just go with that, oh, you didn't meet this minimum score, so we're not going to admit you. So there's pros and cons to both of these also. If a student needs a letter of recommendation, and this is the first thing to think about is if. So quite often I'll have students come in and say, we need this letter of recommendation. Can you write me a letter of recommendation? And you're like, okay, what do you need it for? Well, I don't really know. I just want to have it just in case. Okay, letters of recommendation take a lot of work. I'm sure teachers are giving up a lot of their own personal time to write those letters of recommendation. I know for myself, if I'm going to write one, I try to spend a lot of time on it, and I spend time trying to make sure I know enough about that student to write them a quality letter. So if they're not going to need it, please don't just waste people's time to do that. But if they are going to need it, we like to ask that you give 2 weeks notice to give people time to get the information they need together and to be able to spend some time writing a quality letter. When they're thinking about who they want to ask, it should be somebody who knows them, somebody who's familiar with them and can relate some personal experiences with that student to highlight their strengths. We do go through in Naviance, we had all the students do a survey where they answered a bunch of questions about themselves. We will ask them in the fall if they've not already to do their resume, and so that way that gives information to teachers for writing those essays or letters of recommendation. And then we also encourage you that if you want to complete a brag sheet, then you could write a letter and email it to me, or if you would like an actual questions to answer, I could send you something to just kind of get you going. But welcome brag sheets for parents, because a lot of times parents will tell us things that we never would have known otherwise, and because kids just don't generally brag on themselves. So those are really helpful if your student's going to need letters of recommendation. If you want to submit a brag sheet to me, and I will make sure any teacher will get that, then those are all real helpful for writing those letters of recommendation. Okay, let's talk just a minute about financial aid. That's always what everybody's looking for, is money for college, because it is expensive. Okay, the first thing is the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. This is the form that lots of people hear terrible things about. It's really not that difficult. It has gotten easier over the years, because now instead of having to get your taxes done as soon as possible and then turn around and complete the FAFSA, it's based on prior year. And so for you, it won't be based on your 2019 taxes. It will be based on your 2018 taxes. So hopefully you all have those done before next year. Okay, the FAFSA does open up on October 1. There's really normally not a need to be in a big rush to do it, but after Christmas is usually January is when most people get around to doing that. This is where most of the federal money comes from, is based on scholarships, grants, and loans. Okay, that's where your financial aid comes from, scholarships, grants, and loans, excuse me. And so the grants and loans that you are eligible for is determined by the FAFSA, and that's what you complete so that you know what kinds of opportunities there are for your student to be able to get those grants and loans. I did include in their purple folders some detailed information on what kinds of grants and loans the federal government gives, so be sure and ask them about that. I can give you general information on those kinds of things, but I will give you just a heads up that most the financial aid office at the college your student's looking to go to is the most reliable source of information, because they are going to have the most updated information, and they know what's specific to their school, because everybody has a few quirks here and there. Some of your more selective colleges also require the CSS profile. It's not a normal request for most of our students, but if your child is applying to a very selective school and they ask you for that, just know that that's not abnormal for those schools. It's a little more detailed than the FAFSA, a little more involved, but that's because they go through and look at those individually. They're not just looking at what the federal government is giving. So that's just something else. I just want you to have heard of it. But most of your money, I do want you to also realize, is going to come from the school that your child is attending. That's most often where people get their actual biggest scholarships, based on your ACT scores and GPAs. And whether that's good or bad is all up for debate, and there's pros and cons to all of that, but it is just the facts of this is where most of the money comes from, is either the federal government through the FAFSA or the actual institution itself. The way financial aid is determined, and I'm just going to go through this really briefly because it gets a little involved, and again, it's really more the kind of thing that the financial aid office is going to talk to you about. But every school has what they call a cost of attendance. They're required to come up with a number that is their cost of attendance for the year, and that includes tuition, room and board, books and supplies, everything they've averaged into that. Again, if you look in the purple folder, I've given the students a sheet that has the Arkansas schools that our students most commonly go to, and the cost of the school that's listed on there is that determined cost of attendance, not the actual what you write a check for. Okay, so every school has this calculation, and they've done, and they have their cost of attendance. What the federal government does is they take that cost of attendance, and then based on your FAFSA, they determine an expected family contribution. And that is exactly what it says. It's the amount of money that they expect every family to be willing to pay to help their student with their education. And so some of the things that go into that is the age of the parents, the size of your family, what your assets are. There's all different things, health care of aging parents, medical expenses, and they have this formula that they come up with, and that's what they call their EFC. And so you have your cost of attendance minus your EFC, which gives you however much money left that the student needs. And then you have to determine how you're going to fill that need, whether it's through loans or work study, which is also something that the FAFSA will determine if your student's eligible for work study. So the last thing I would like to say about this in particular is that I would ask that you not let sticker shock affect you on the front end of looking at choices of colleges, because just the front end cost of a college is not necessarily what you're going to have to pay. And different colleges have different award packages that they also can give. And so that needs to be the kind of thing that you look at more towards the end. And I'm not saying don't take tuition into account at all, but basically sometimes a more expensive school will give better scholarships than a school that doesn't cost as much on the front end, and so the final number of what you have to pay is less. So basically, you can have a school that costs $25,000 a year and one that costs $40,000 a year. But if the $40,000 college gives you $39,000 in scholarships, and obviously is going to be cheaper. And so you don't really know that until all your financial aid information is turned in and you've received an award letter back from the school telling you everything you're eligible for and going to get. And that usually happens in the spring. So if you're kind of riding the fence about different schools, just remember and maybe talk to your child about, well, we'll see. It's going to come down to money, and money's important, and that's something that you and your child need to talk about. So just kind of be having a conversation all along of, this is where we are, and this is what we're willing to pay, and this is what you're going to have to do. So let's see what these final amounts come down to, and then we'll make a decision on what can happen from there. Okay, Arkansas scholarships, I just want to real briefly make sure that everybody is aware of these. These are only for students who are going to school in the state of Arkansas. So if your child decides to go out of state to school, they will not be eligible for these awards. The first one is the Academic Challenge. Most people call it the Lottery Scholarship. The only requirement for this is a 19 composite score on the ACT. The first year is $1,000, and then it goes up every year after that. So it's worth a total of $14,000, which is a good chunk of change. And you could those applications also come due in October. I don't start pushing students until after Christmas to start getting that done, but that is the only criteria for that is the 19 on the ACT. The next scholarship is the Governor's Distinguished, which requires a minimum of 32 on the ACT and a 3.5 core GPA, which means they are just looking at their math, science, English, history, and foreign language classes. Now, they only guarantee 300 of these scholarships a year. So far, they've always awarded money to everybody who is eligible, but that could change at any time depending on the legislature, and these are worth up to $10,000 a year. So it's a really nice scholarship. Now, it does have a deadline of December 31st, and no, the score has to be prior to December 31st, and then the application is due in January, so it's an earlier turnaround to get that one done. For students who are planning to go on and try and play sports in college, they have to clear with the NCAA. They have to be academically eligible to be able to do that. This is just a picture of a form we do to help them keep up with their eligibility. If there's anybody who is looking to play sports, hopefully they've been telling me that all along, and we have gone through and done these forms with them. They are also in their purple folder. But if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to contact me and we can go through and make sure that there's not any issues. The NCAA uses a sliding scale, so you can see on here that the higher their ACT score, then the lower their GPA can be, and vice versa. The important thing is if your child is looking to play at any D1 or D2 school, they need to register with the clearinghouse at this address up here, and they need to do that right away so that they can get cleared a preliminary clearing for coaches to talk to them. Another thing that all the students have to do, male students, is register with the Selective Service. I didn't make this rule. I know it's unfair, but males have to do it. So within 30 days of their 18th birthday, they're supposed to go onto this website and do their Selective Service registration. If they don't do this, then they're not going to be eligible for any financial aid from the colleges. So make sure they get that done. ACT dates. I just want to make sure everybody is aware of taking the ACT. I don't think that's an issue for anybody. It's a graduation requirement, but also that it's very important for college. And again, every school is asking for ACT scores almost in every instance. And a lot of times what they're looking at is just to determine what the ACT is a test to predict how well they will do their freshman year of college. And so they have benchmarks for the ACT. For English, it's an 18. For algebra, it's a 22. For social science, a 22. And biology is a 23. And what those benchmarks do is statistically say that if your child meets the benchmark, they have a 75% chance of making a C or better in that freshman equivalent class, or a 50% of chance of making a B or better. And so it's just letting a college know that that student is college ready. So if your child is below benchmark in one of these areas, then that's something that you might need to be thinking about and talking about with them, and how they might be able to get up to speed and do some things to work on that, just to give them the greatest chance for success in college, even if they've been admitted. Now, we all know that test scores aren't everything, that lots of students do much better in school than they do on test scores, but it's just the only thing they have that is a standard that they can compare apples to apples. Schools will always take the highest score that a student makes, and then some schools will actually super score, which means they will take the highest score in each section And so they may get a better score in English this time and a better score in math the next time. And they will super score those to give the student their highest score for admission and sometimes for scholarship. So you want to check with the different colleges about that. I do want to make sure that you're aware of what is called the test release. This is one of the greatest tools for studying for the ACT. It's only available in December, April, and June. It costs about $20, and you request this test release, and the student will receive back a copy of the test, the correct answers, and their answers. And so it's a really great way for them to be able to study, figure out, oh, this is what I got wrong. That was a careless mistake. I won't make that again, or I have no clue, and I need to go find somebody to help me with that. So it's a great study tool. So basically, senior year is a really, really busy time. It goes really, really fast, and sometimes it can be very emotional for parents. That's natural. It's a natural process. I think that what I hear most commonly is there's a lot of frustration sometimes between parents and students. You're trying to make sure you have them prepared. You're wanting them to do everything. They're trying to be independent. And so sometimes that creates friction. Just know that's normal. Try not to let it get to you. What I hear most common is parents saying, this is nature's way of preparing me for them to be gone. But because by the time it gets to the end of the year, I'm ready. I'm ready for them to go. But we all know that's not always true. It's a really exciting time. I will testify that I have found that adult children are awesome. You get past that having to hound them about doing things, and you just get to have an adult relationship. And so that's really cool, and it's something to look forward to. But enjoy this year. Enjoy this year with your child. Pursue opportunities to be together, but also understand when they're going to be resisting you a little bit, and y'all just have to work through it. It's really nice to have some frank talks about what your expectations are for college. And I just want to, if you will, give you permission to have those talks with your child, to tell them, it's perfectly within your right to say, if we're going to be forking out a lot of money, and we have been paying a lot of money for you to go and be prepared for college, and when you get there, I want you to have a great time, but this is my expectation of what your grades need to be. And if it's not, this is the consequence. And, in some ways, basically, if you think about it, that's only fair. That's fair to the student to know what it is on the front end, and fair for you, so that everybody knows exactly where they stand, and you don't have to have these awkward conversations later because everybody knew on the front end that's what it was going to be. When it comes to paying for college, we're not all the same. Some of us are able to and willing to pay 100% for college, and some are not. But that's a discussion that you want to have so that everybody's real clear on the front end. And again, it's perfectly up to you and your family what you decide to do. But I just want to encourage you to talk about that so that it's not a surprise to anybody, where your child is thinking one thing is going to happen and then are surprised at the end when that doesn't. What else? Okay, I know it's very tempting to try and cram a whole lot of stuff into senior year, as far as, okay, and I'll tell my husband, I always tell on him because he just panicked my first child's senior year of, I haven't taught him to change the oil in the car. I haven't taught him to do this. I haven't taught him to do that. How is he going to make it? And in reality, he can go to college just fine without all that. There are things you want to teach him: how to do their laundry, some basic skills. How to change the oil might be great, but it might not be necessary. So don't just put all that pressure on you or them. Take time to enjoy one another and just to have fun. They're going to make mistakes. We make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. We learn from those. Encourage them to try something new this year, to be friends with somebody new, just to make it the best senior year they can possibly have. Support them, encourage them in that, and we will too. I do want to say that I am here to help in any way I can. I always get very, very attached to the seniors, even if I haven't really known them very well coming in. They have a special place in my heart, and I want them to be successful, just as all their teachers do. Your kids are all very special to us, and we are very close, and it's just a great time to spend this year together. And yes, there's going to be times that we're frustrated with them too. And again, that's just part of the process and it's normal, but we love them and we want to help you in every way we can and support them to be their best self. And so just please let us know if there's something we can do to help, and know that you're going to survive it and they're going to survive it, and we're all going to thrive in the end. And the end will be awesome. And like I said before, adult kids are really, really fun. I hope that this has been helpful for you, that I've answered some questions you might have. If anything has come up that, I know we can't really do a question and answer period here, but please feel free to email me anytime if you want to set up an appointment to talk. I'm happy to do that, and we can walk through things specific to you and your situation. But I appreciate you giving me your attention and your time. And again, it's going to be great. It's going to be a great year. And just let me know if I can do anything to help you. Thank you very much.